Hi there, and welcome to another edition of Dot Connecting with David Icke. Without further ado, let's welcome the man himself, David Icke. How are you?
Thanks, Richie. I'm good. The end of the last program, I talked about the fact that I would go through some of the things that were predicted by a guy called Dr. Richard Day. I'll come to him in a second, but what I'm going to go through is one of many examples of how you can show not just prior knowledge of where the world has now gone and where it's designed to go beyond that, but also how distant, how long before today that the process that the world is being taken through and the changes in society that the world is being taken through, how long, what we call back in the past, this was known, and it was known for a simple reason. So I've been writing and saying for years and years, this society that we are experiencing today, and the one that they want to take us even deeper into, the great Orwellian global state, has not been in the making for years or decades. It's been in the making for, well, let's go back the smallest distance. It goes back much further than this, but it's been going on for hundreds of years. In fact, way beyond that. And so, in the first Dot Connecting program, I talked about that web, that spider's web, where each strand in this symbolic web is a secret society, a semi-secret society, or an organization like a government or a government agency or a bank or a corporation that we see in the public arena. And if you can, because this has been so long projected, if you can get access to one of these strands that are close to the spider, and you can get deep enough into it, because it's all compartmentalized, you can get access to this projected agenda. And this allows you, for instance, to write prophetic novels that appear to be from the imagination. But with the hindsight of decades, people are saying, that's amazing. What they said would happen in that novel is happening. Well, maybe it wasn't a novel. Maybe it was coming from access to this agenda. And of course, the two most famous ones are 1984 by George Orwell, real name Eric Blair, and Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. And they were not independent of each other entirely, to say the least, because Huxley was the French teacher at one point of Orwell, Blair, at Eton College, which is where the royals go, and all the, the richest families send their children very close to Windsor Castle. And they were also connected by something called the Fabian Society, which in effect created the British Labour Party and has a global impact, particularly on what they call the left of politics. And they both had access to the Fabian Society, and from that inner knowledge came two novels. 1984 was about the police state. It was about constant 24-hour surveillance and the manipulation of social engineering and all that. And then you had Brave New World, Aldous Huxley, and he was concentrating on genetics, how children were taken away from their parents and in the end weren't even produced through the parents, but through technological means in laboratories. What do they call it? The World Hatching Central, whatever he called it, the hatchery. And so, if you read those two novels, you are very, very close to seeing what the projected agenda is, and indeed what's now unfolding as we get closer to it. And Dr. Richard Day is another example of this prior knowledge. He didn't write a novel, but for some reason he stood up at a meeting of pediatricians in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, got the exact date, March the 20th, 1969. And he was just supposed to make a speech. But he then told people to turn off their recording equipment and not take notes, because he was going to tell them how the world was going to change. And Day was National Medical Director of Planned Parenthood. Now, Planned Parenthood now claims to be basically a birth control, in fact, population control organization. But it was created by the House of Rockefeller, who sent eugenicists to Germany to work with the Nazi eugenicists at the time of Hitler and the Nazis in Germany. The Rockefeller family have a long history of funding eugenics. And so Dr. Richard Day was a Rockefeller insider. And indeed, Planned Parenthood started out as a eugenics organization and then, as I say, took on another public image. He was also a professor of pediatrics at the Mount Sinai Medical School in New York, which is why he was being asked to talk to these pediatricians. Well, anyway, another doctor, or one doctor, in the audience in Pittsburgh in 1969, Lawrence Donegan, he was a pediatrician, he did take notes. And before he died in 2004, he did a series of radio interviews in which he described what Dr. Richard Day had said in 1969. And it's worth remembering that 1969 was only 37 years after Huxley's book and only 21 years after Orwell's book. And they had, through their different means, accessed knowledge of this projected agenda. Two did it with novels. This guy came openly out and said, this is how it's going to be. And remember, as I go through these points, that we're talking 1969. First of all, he said that there was a world system coming, which of course has been in my books all these decades, a world system of centralization of power and control in the world. And he said there was a plan to sabotage American industry. He said that different parts of the world would be assigned different roles of industry and commerce in a unified global system. Now, this is precisely what has happened in the European Union. What has come out with the passage of what we call time is that people like Ted Heath, who signed Britain into the European Union, and others that entered, they'd agreed that they would run down industries and parts of their economy with which, in the great blueprint of the European Union, their country was not listed to specialize in. And one of the things that Heath agreed, this has come out with official documents over the decades, was he was going to run down the British fishing industry, although we're an island nation, because Britain, staggeringly, was not going to specialize in fishing in the unified European Union. And the unified European Union that's unfolding so fast is just a lower level of the unified global structure that this guy was talking about, and I've been talking about for a long time. Another thing that Heath agreed to as part of this unification was that he would run down manufacturing industry. He'd run down steel industry and all these things in the British economy. What has happened since we joined the European Union? The fishing industry, the manufacturing industries, steel, and all that goes with it, all been run down to the point of destruction. Coal mining was going to be run down. Margaret Thatcher came in, the successor to Heath in the Conservative Party, and she destroyed basically the mining industry. So what has happened in Europe is what this guy is talking about in 1969. He said also then that the preeminence of the United States and the relative independence and self-sufficiency of America was going to end, and the old structure would have to be destroyed to make way for the new. What has happened in this period since he said that is that we've had a systematic destruction of the American economy. It's been done in many, many ways. A foundation of it has been outsourcing jobs into Mexico and the Far East. And exactly as he talked about, heavy industry was going to be destroyed in America, and it's been moved out to other countries to exploit slave labor. And of course, another way that it's been done and is still being done is to make the American economy dependent on the constant increase of the amount of debt. And they keep having these debt ceilings, and then they have a farce of a kind of an argument, and then they say, okay, we'll go through the debt ceiling. And the point comes eventually, and it's probably not too far from now, when the debt is such that the whole thing's going to collapse. And that's the idea. And this is what he was talking about all those years ago. If you want a structure, and this is what they want, this unified structure is meant to be a world government dictating to all countries, or all regions, because they want it into countries eventually. A world army imposing the will of the world government. A world central bank dictating all global finance. A world currency, which would just be a single electronic currency, and for which there are massive implications for freedom, as I've mentioned in the Dot Connecting series already. And they want a microchip population connected to a global computer. Now, if you are going to have a world government tyranny dictating to all countries, you cannot have a superpower with the financial and military might to say no to you. And that has been the prime reason why America, the superpower financially and militarily, is being systematically destroyed to bring it in under the heel of this unified system that Day was talking about. He went on to say that every part of the world would have a speciality and so become interdependent. This is the point. If you have self-sufficiency within your borders of the basics of life, you have a situation where you can make decisions because you're not dependent on external forces. But if you are specializing in this, but other things that you need to survive and prosper are actually being produced elsewhere, you are dependent on them, and whatever you produce, they are dependent on you for that. And so when you've got this situation where everyone's dependent on everyone else, the power is with that cabal that controls all the points of production and all the points of dependency. And that's why we are seeing this systematic creation of dependency. America, he said in 1969, would remain a center for agriculture, high technology, communications and education, but heavy industry would be transported out. That's what we've seen. He also revealed a plan to cull and control the population through medicine, food, new laboratory-made diseases, and the suppression of the cure for cancer. If you want to cull the population, first of all, you want to make them sick to bring that about. And also, you'd want to stop access for the population to things that would stop them being sick. And this is why we've had this monopoly, virtually, on so-called healthcare by the pharmaceutical cartel, which is controlled by this cabal that I'm talking about, just as the biotech cartel is, just as the banking system is, and the governments are. And again and again, we've seen diseases come out, and so-called viruses, where it's like come out of nowhere. Where is this? And again, if you do the research, you go back to government laboratories. And the idea is to increase this as part of the culling of the population. This is a wonderful encapsulation of the empathy-deleted mentality of those that are behind this. Day said to this group, we can cure almost every cancer right now, he said in 1969. Information is on file in the Rockefeller Institute, it's now called the Rockefeller University, if it is ever decided that it should be released. They said that letting people die of cancer would slow down population growth, and charmingly, you may as well die of cancer as something else. And in, when was it? 1997, I had this invitation to meet a CIA scientist, 1997. And he invited me through a third party to his home because he wanted to tell me what was going on, and he had no way of getting that into the public arena. So I went to meet him. Lovely, lovely fella in America. And he was with his family, and we were chatting. And I'll tell you something else that happened with that meeting in a second. But one of the things he told me is that he had got cancer. And the CIA wanted him to continue his covert work for them, pushing this agenda in the scientific realm. And so they didn't want him to die. So they gave him a serum. He called it a serum, that was his word. And almost in no time, cancer gone. And this is suppressed because they don't want people, for the very reasons that he's talking about, being cured of cancer. And when you look at some of the most famous and obvious members of this cabal, the British royal family, Father George Bush, David Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger, what do they all have in common? They live incredibly long lives. I mean, the Queen Mother went to 102, and you've got Prince Philip and the Queen right up there, Kissinger, David Rockefeller in his 90s, Father George Bush catching up. Why? It's not by coincidence or chance. It's because they are treated in a different way to the rest of the population. And one of the key things to that is they have the cure for cancer, and they're not letting the population have it. And I say, all those years ago, he was talking about that. He said that abortion would no longer be illegal and would be accepted as normal, and he pointed out this was part of the population policy. This is fascinating in the light of what is happening around the world today. He said the food supply would be monitored so that no one could give food to a fugitive of the system, his word quotes. Growing food privately would be banned by saying it wasn't safe. Now, if you look at, particularly in North America, you have a situation where people are increasingly being banned from growing their own food in their own gardens. They're using zoning excuses. You can't grow food in a front garden. And the idea is to control the production of food, stop the private production of food. This is why the small growers and small farmers and independent growers and farmers are being so targeted around the world. Because if the state system, this unified global system in the end, can control the production of food and control access to water, then you control the survival of the population, and you put the population into a situation where they do what you tell them or they don't get access to the basics of life. So that's yet another point in this list where it's demonstrably starting to happen. And it's a key part of this agenda is to control food and to control water.
Good stuff, David. That's it for part one of Dot Connecting with David Icke. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with part two. See you then. Welcome back to the second part of Dot Connecting with David Icke. Just before we get David back on again, remember, if you've missed any of the earlier episodes, they're available on davidicke.com, and you can watch them on the People's Voice YouTube channel as well. David, back over to you.
Yeah, we're talking about food control equaling people control and water control equaling people control. And another major aspect of this is genetically modified food. We've all seen the stories of biotech giants like Monsanto, all part of this unified system cabal, who are producing genetically modified food, which is genetically modifying us. That's another deeper part of the agenda. And when their seeds get from a farm growing genetically modified crops and go onto a farm that's not growing genetically modified crops and doesn't want to, often the last thing they want to do, Monsanto are prosecuting the farm that doesn't want the seeds for growing their crops without paying a royalty, without having a license. What did I just say? License. License to grow. So the idea is that you not only desperately, catastrophically impact on human health, the population cull, through genetically modified food, you control the distribution and growing of food by licensing it, because the idea is that if you can't get people to grow it as a choice, then you'll contaminate their farms and they'll grow it anyway. And if they won't play ball, you'll take them to court and they can't continue anyway because they've got no money. You know, they've been bankrupted by the court case. This has happened not just once, many, many, many times. So there are so many multi-layered agendas to genetically modified food, and that fundamentally is one of them, the control of food. Because we have had, over the history of the human race growing food, the process where one season's seeds or crops provide the seeds for the next season, and it's self-sufficient, it's ongoing. What they've created, Monsanto and Co., the biotech cabal, is what they call terminator seeds, or what have become called terminator seeds, where you have one season and they will not go to the next season. So you have to buy some more. And this is all part of this control of the process of producing and distributing food. And notice that quote there, where he's talking about the food would be monitored so that no one could give it to a fugitive of the system. It's all part of this great control system that we're moving into unless we wake up fast. There would be restrictions on travel and private home ownership would disappear. If people put Agenda 21 into a search engine, they will be shocked if they've never come across it, because much of this stuff that I'm talking about is actually in something called Agenda 21, which is an official global UN kind of policy, which is popping up all over the world, in even communities as small as the Isle of Wight, where I live, which is like 130,000 people, and just a few miles by a few miles. We've got Agenda 21 there. And Agenda 21, among its many, many horrific plans, is to bring an end to private home ownership, because apparently it's unsustainable, according to them, because of global warming and all this stuff is the underpinning fake reason and fake excuse for introducing all this Agenda 21 stuff. What you're having is house prices and the ability to own your own property getting more and more and more and more out of the possibility of more and more people. People say that house prices going up is a good thing. It's not a good thing at all. It's a terrible thing. It's the basic of life. And it gets more expensive, so let's have a round of applause. That's ludicrous. And the whole property market is being manipulated to make it more and more difficult to own your own property. And another thing that is a fundamental tenet of Agenda 21, and it's all part of what Day was talking about, is to get people off the land and to clear the land of people so that you can get the people concentrated in highly densely populated cities called human settlement zones. That's what they're calling them in their documents. And then you've got control of them in terms of surveillance, and you've got control of them in terms of their water supply, you've got control of them in terms of their food supply, and that's all part of this whole thing that I'm talking about. Day said that there would be an increase in violence, pornography, and obscenity in the media and movies to desensitize people to violence and porn and make them feel life is short, precarious, and brutish. This is clearly happening and has happened since he said it, but is clearly happening today, where they are creating a brutal society where it's every person for themselves. And they're dividing and ruling people down those fault lines. And we're seeing in government policy, whether it's in America or Canada or in Britain and the European Union, we are seeing this brutalizing of the population with the destruction of the welfare state, the reduction and even deletion of benefits for people who have no other way of funding their lives and getting to the basics of food and shelter. It's all part of what he predicted. Music would get worse and be used for programming perception. Now, if you can control the music that people hear, because, I've talked in the previous Dot Connecting shows about the fact that beyond this reality that we see, which is holographic reality, illusory physical, actually everything is a vibrational information field. Now, what is music? It's vibration. And if you can get the vibration right and the frequency right, you can disrupt the mental and emotional and therefore two physical processes, what we call physical in the holographic realm, of that person. This is why headbangers and stuff, they take all this incredibly, well, I would say violent vibrational music, and it can absolutely literally blow their blooming minds because of the effect it's having on the vibrational level, which then affects us mentally, emotionally, and what we call physically. And of course, music is, and the presentation of music and music videos and music shows is increasingly awash with symbolism that these people use all the time. And just a quick one. People say, well, why would they put these same symbols everywhere? Well, when I'm talking to you now, I'm sending you a vibrational information field, and you're decoding it with your ears, and then you're hearing it as words. It's not words passing between us, it's an information field. You're decoding this into what, and I'm doing it to myself as I decode my own vibrational field. But everything is a vibrational field. So a symbol is a vibrational field. And if that symbol represents something, as it's a certain kind of information field, then just as the vibrational fields from my vocal cords are going into your brain through your ears, so symbols go into the brain through the sight process. And if you look at the research, the vast majority of information that we take on and decode into some kind of reality actually comes through the sight system processes, not through the ears. So symbols talk to you in that way, in the sense that you are absorbing and decoding that information field. So you can watch a show and it's done in a certain way, just like a satanic ritual is done in a certain way on purpose. And it can fundamentally impact upon your perception of self, the world, and how you think, how you feel. They said that society would be severely controlled and people would be electronically tagged. 1969. And what he's talking about there is microchipping. Long-established communities, he said, would be destroyed by unemployment and mass immigration. I mean, look at the most extreme example in America, Detroit. Unemployment and mass immigration. What is mass immigration about? What we've got to understand, I would strongly suggest, is that we're being played off against each other and we are being divided and ruled. And we've got to get streetwise and not see everything in black and white. People say, are you for immigration? Well, yeah. Are you against it? Oh, you're a racist then. Surely, it's like the gun control in America. You can have a debate over whether you should have guns in society or you shouldn't. But the debate above that, the streetwise debate at this time, is why is the government trying to take guns away now on a mass scale in America? Why are they doing it? What's the agenda? Who benefits from an unarmed population in America? Well, the simple answer is anyone that wants to take the place over without too much resistance. And it's the same in the area of immigration. What he is talking about there in terms of destroying communities is breaking down a sense of nationhood, a sense of culture. Now, I say that we're all infinite awareness having an experience. And cultures and races, they're just illusory experiences of different kinds. Fair enough. I mean, it kind of gives life a bit of interest, all these different cultures, different races, different views. But it's just an experience. It's not who we are. We are not Muslim or Christian or white or black or sky blue, pink or Jewish or all that stuff. We're not that. That's our experience. We are consciousness having that experience. So immigration and race to me is just virtually irrelevant, but it's not if you're trying to manipulate it. And what they are wanting to do, and they are doing with mass immigration, is to take a sense of nationhood away from people. And again, I'm British, but only because I was born on a piece of land called Britain. I mean, I was born on some piece of land, or I would have drowned, I suppose. I don't see myself as British. I see myself as infinite consciousness, having the experience of someone whose body was produced in Britain. So I'm not a nationalist in any way, shape, or form. The point is, lots of people are, and they have a sense of nationhood. And when you then, from a unified system point of view, want to take over that sense of nationhood and say, no, you're coming into this great kind of European Union and we're going to take it all over, or this world system, and we're going to make everyone the same, then the less that people identify with their nation and their culture, the better. Because there's less resistance to that culture or that nation being taken over in a global or European system. And so the idea of mass immigration is to create divide and rule and conflict, and also to destroy a sense of nationhoods. I mean, how many times do you hear you say, well, I don't know what being British mean anymore? What does being American mean anymore? And if you can get people to that point, then the resistance to having that made just a small unit within a greater control system, it's very much reduced in terms of the resistance. And that's the idea behind that. Interesting thing, and very relevant to Richard Day, whether modification would be used as a weapon of war. Now, he was talking from experience because he was a weather manipulator during the World War II. And of course, when you look at what we call HAARP in Alaska and other technological means of manipulating the weather, they're doing it. I mean, people say you can't manipulate the weather. Of course you can. I mean, what is the weather? The weather, like everything else, is a vibrational information field. A cloud that's fluffy is a certain information field, and then it changes and becomes like a thundercloud or something. That's a different information field. So it's just a different frequency. It's a different form of information that manifests holographically as something we see as different kinds of clouds. And so, again, everything that we call weather in its base state is vibrational information fields at different frequencies. And what, for instance, the HAARP technology in Alaska is doing is bouncing radio waves, high-powered radio waves, off the ionosphere, right up in the upper atmosphere, and it's making the ionosphere vibrate. So when these radio waves hit the ionosphere and start it vibrating, as the radio waves come back, they are fantastically more empowered and powerful as a result of that interaction than they were when they were first delivered. And if you can manipulate the vibrational fields of what we call weather systems, first of all, you can move them. The jet stream, one of the strange weather systems, the situations we've had in Europe, which has given us, droughts and at other times given us unbelievable amounts of rain week after week after week, is the way the jet stream has moved. And there was a European Parliament committee investigating HAARP way back in the 90s when it wasn't fully empowered and fully on stream. And they were pointing out in that report that one of the things that HAARP could do was move the jet stream, which is what's been blamed for these weather systems, that strange weather systems we've been having in Britain over the last few years. And then you think that what is a tornado? It's a fast rotating electromagnetic field. You can create that by technological means. What about a hurricane? What about a typhoon? All these things are capable of being created by this technology. And if it wasn't, then why would you have global agreements and treaties between countries agreeing that they won't manipulate the weather when that's precisely if they couldn't do it? But that's precisely what they can do. And there was a BBC radio investigation into something that happened in, I think it was 1950s, a place called Linton and Lynmouth. Very famous, dramatic flood that killed people and devastated the village as it came down into the sea. And all these years later, I mean, the rain that caused it was unbelievable. We're talking the 1950s. And it came out in this radio documentary that actually the Royal Air Force had been using cloud seeding, rain seeding technology. I think it was sulfur they used, which in the period running up to that fantastic rain, which actually caused it. This is the 1950s. What is possible in 2013? And you know, when Native Americans used to do the rain dance, people say, oh, you can't make the rain by dancing. What were they doing? Bang, bang, bang. And in the way that they did it, the rhythm, the drums, the creating a vibrational field. And if you get the vibrational field right, you create the impact of rain. And all that's happening now is they're doing it on a far more technological level. So it's a really good thing for people when we have these great typhoons and these unbelievable numbers of tornadoes they've had in the Midwest over the last few years, and all these big weather extremes. They say it's global warming. Well, maybe it's not. Maybe it's technologically created because of what Day said, weather modification will be used as a weapon of war. Look at the countries that have been devastated by weather. And what happens to them afterwards? They're taken over.
Thanks, David. Much of the information is available on davidicke.com. You can go to davidicke.com/headlines. We'll be back for the final part in a couple of minutes' time. I'll see you then. And welcome back to the final part of this edition of Dot Connecting with David Icke. Once again, to remind you, if you've missed the earlier episodes, check out davidicke.com and indeed the People's Voice YouTube channel. David.
Right, I've just got a list here. I'll quickly go through them of what Day said. Population control, permission to have babies. What's happening in China is designed to be global. Redirecting the purpose of sex, sex without reproduction and reproduction without sex. Contraception universally available to all. Sex education and carnalizing of youth as a tool of world government. Tax-funded abortion as population control. Technology used for reproduction without sex. That's straight out of Brave New World, Aldous Huxley. Families to diminish in importance. When you see these various expressions of the projected agenda, destroying the family unit is always there. Euthanasia pill and the demise pill, limiting access to affordable medical care will make eliminating the elderly easier. They want people in the prime of life to have the strength to serve the system. Once they've passed that point and the system is being asked to actually give them something from what they've paid in for their later life, they don't want that. They want rid of the elderly. This is why we're seeing more and more, and I completely understand why people say it should happen. and that is that people should have the right to help people die if they're in terrible straits. But that's not where it's meant to end. That's the point. That's the excuse to start it. And people say, well, it's fair enough. And I do understand why they say that. But the idea is to expand it and expand it and expand it. This is why we have people old people being left to die in hospitals. This is why we have this thing called the Liverpool Care Pathway in this country, where they now, and the government said they would get rid of it after a great outcry, and all they've done is come out with another version of it. And that is the situation where if a doctor decides that a person, usually old for obvious reasons, elderly, he's got a few days to live, then they take drugs away, they take food away, and they basically kill him. And so many over the years, when their loved ones have said no, we're not having it, and they've got them back on what was taken away, they've lived for a heck of a long time. Afterwards, when they were supposed to be dying in a few days. This is all stepping stones. These are all the dots to what this guy was talking about in terms of eliminating the elderly. What did he say? You might as well die of cancer as die of anything. You've got to die of something. Lovely man. Medicine would be tightly controlled. The elimination of private doctors, new difficult to diagnose untreatable diseases, suppressing cancer cures as a means of population control. And that's the reason why alternative ways of treating cancer, and I've seen them work stunningly in my life, they become criminal offenses, whereas the scalpel or radiation and chemotherapy, which just devastate the immune system and open you to endless other diseases, including further cancer, that's fine. And we're having judges insisting against parental choice to have children given chemotherapy and radiation. The state imposing it on them, and yet cures that and treatments that would not have that devastating effect on the body, they become criminal, and you're unable to even talk about them. It's all part of what he was talking about. Inducing heart attacks as a form of assassination. Remember that one, when someone dies of a heart attack at a very optimum moment for the system, if they're revealing something or planning to reveal something. Blending all religions. The old religions will have to go. Changing the Bible through key revisions of key words. It's where some of the modern translations have come in. But, you know, researchers have been writing for a long time about the plan to create a one world religion. And we are some way from that, but that's the ultimate goal of bringing in this one world religion. And what that religion, for people that watch the second of the dot connecting programs, what that religion would be, as most of the religions even are today, would be the worship of these entities that are the spider at the center of this web, dictating into the world that we can see. Restructuring education as a tool of indoctrination. The great line he came out with here: more time in schools, but pupils wouldn't learn anything. And this is all part of the dumbing down of education. And because education is just a programming operation. It's nothing to do with educating. It's nothing to do with creating sharp-minded people who are free-thinking and make their own judgments on the world. It's about creating software programs who just take on the belief system that suits the system that is behind the education process. And it talks here too about schools being the hub of the community. You'll notice now around the world where schools are being given more and more power over parental rights. And that's part of the process of moving the power of over children in their formative years of parents to the state via schools and via other means. Controlling who has access to information. This is the censorship of the internet, for instance. It's the censorship of the mainstream media. And this is why the people's voice exists, to actually overcome this part of the agenda. And it's crucial, because the information that people receive is obviously fundamental in how they see themselves in the world, and thus how they act or don't act, and how they see what is desirable from their point of view and what isn't. And so the control of access to information is the bottom line of all of this. Some books would just disappear from libraries, he said. Changing laws to promote moral and social chaos, the encouragement of drug abuse to create a jungle atmosphere in cities and towns, promote alcohol abuse. He goes on, they want to create, or intended to create, an end to what he called psychological or physical security, and to use crime to manage society. The more crime, the more fear. The more fear, the more you justify the introduction of the police state to protect people from the crime you are systematically allowing to expand, particularly violent crime. The need for more jails and using hospitals as jails. Of course, what we're seeing in terms of jails is, and it's another great aspect of this whole agenda, is to make a situation where private corporations controlled by the same network are actually running everything. So now we're having health in this country. We're having the National Health Service being systematically destroyed, so it can be handed over, as it is being, to private corporations who have no interest whatsoever in the welfare of the population. And we're having more and more private prisons in America and in Britain too, where corporations are taking over prisons and insisting in their contracts that there is a guaranteed level of prisoners in their prisons for the contract to be fulfilled. So it's in the interest, therefore, of the state and indeed this agenda to have more and more and more laws and to put people in jail for less and less and less extreme offences, sometimes absolutely ridiculous offences. Implanted ID cards, microchips, he was talking about in 1969. And all this cashless society and credit cards is a stepping stone to it be, and the smartphones, you know, do your banking without cash through your phone and what have you. That's the stepping stone to actually having it all done through a microchip under the skin. And once you have a microchip under your skin, whoever is talking to the microchip technologically has control of your body and your physical, mental, and emotional health. Knowing how people respond, making them do what you want. This is the social engineering of knowing through enormous research going on in the shadows, that if you do this, the population will do this. And if the population do that to that, the population will then be open for you doing that, when without that, they wouldn't be. They'd even resist it. It's a classic example of that is problem, reaction, solution, as I call it. You create a problem, you tell the people a false reason for the problem, i.e. someone else is responsible, and you want the people to say, do something about the problem. They think this is the reason for, but actually it's you, and then you who've created the problem offer the solutions to the problems you've created. I talked about this in the first Dot Connection show. That's a wonderful example of knowing how people respond and making them do what you want. This is a classic. Falsified scientific research, global warming, I rest my case. One of the things that is fundamental, as I mentioned earlier to this, is to persuade people that human activity is changing the planet, therefore human activity must change and we must deindustrialize, which is where this agenda wants to go. And so all you've got to do is get official science, which you control through funding anyway, to give a certain version of what's happening. Yeah, it's human activity causing all this. Well, what about the sun? The sun? Oh, never thought that would have anything to do with the weather and temperature. And what you do then is people that are saying it's all qualified scientists who are saying actually global warming is a nonsense. Actually, the graph says it's a nonsense because temperatures haven't risen since 1997. But they kick on anyway. And whenever you're in a situation where, against all evidence, fracking's a wonderful example, against all evidence and against all common sense, but they do it anyway, it's the agenda because they're not taking no for an answer. Use of terrorism, he said in 1969, would be used to change society. I mean, they've not done that, have they? Creating false terrorist events and fake terrorists, and then using that problem reaction solution to change society. As a result of 9/11, they have transformed global society and destroyed the most basic privacy on the back of that. Surveillance, implants, and televisions that watch you. Now we've got these smart TVs, they can watch it. And he said, and then put it all together, he said, the arrival of the totalitarian global system. It's happening in front of our eyes. And in 1923, a group of people funded and brought together by the House of Rothschild created something, 1923, called the Frankfurt School. This is the Frankfurt School of Social Engineering. It started in Frankfurt, hence the name, which is the kind of home city of the House of Rothschild dynasty. And then it moved to Switzerland. It went to New York in 1935, and then 6 years later, it went to California. And one of its great productions, social engineering productions, is political correctness. That's why California is the political correct capital of the world. And the idea is, political correctness, is you get people, again, divide and rule at war with each other. If you say that about me, then I'll report you to the authorities. And if you say that about me, I'll report you to the authorities. And everyone's kind of, at war on another level over so-called political correctness. And I have a kind of an antidote for political correctness. So what? Can you imagine the abuse that's been thrown at me in the last 25 years? Right? So, okay. The power that abuse has over you is only the power you allow it to give. You give it. So when people say to me, you're this, that, you're there, you're this, that, I just say, well, thanks for sharing that with me. God, is that the time? And you don't have to fall for it. But what's happening with political correctness is people, various groups, are being told to be upset, are being told to be outraged. The media's doing it all the time. And so they are. And now we're at war with each other through political correctness. And when you get to the point where one council, true story, banned having brainstorming sessions and said that they had to call them thought showers because it might upset people who had a problem with the mind. I mean, where are you going? When you can't say black coffee, you have to say coffee without milk. I mean, but this is the level it's got to, and it's social engineering out the Frankfurt School and others that's brought it about. This is the wish list of the Frankfurt School. See if you recognize it. The creation of racism offenses, divide and rule, play people off against each other, continual change to create confusion, take stability out of society. So no one could go, ooh, yeah, bit of stability. No, change. They have a name for it as well in some of the documents, future shock, constantly giving people shock so that they're always on edge. What's going to happen next? You know, it's like, oh, it's a nice day today, but give it time. Something will go wrong. Oh, yes, another shock, another change. And of course, we've got Obama. He got elected with one word, change. And all he was talking about was a continuation of this agenda, a continuation of this change, which has been going on decade after decade after decade. Frankfurt School, given what Dr. Day said, huge immigration to destroy national identity. The promotion of excessive drinking, he mentioned that. Emptying churches. And what that's about is destroying anything that brings people together in unity. They want people divided and at war with each other. Anything that brings people together, even if it's on a spurious belief system, they want to destroy it. A legal system with bias against victims of crime. This is all part of the using crime to socially engineer society. Dependency on the state or state benefits. What they've done is bring a situation where they've manipulated society to create dependency on state benefits. And then the next stage after that is to cut the legs off and withdraw the state benefits, leaving them in destitution. And that's precisely what's happening now. Control and dumbing down of the media. That's not happened, is it? And encouraging, here we go again, encouraging the breakdown of the family. So that's one person's speech in 1969, somehow miraculously predicting the society that we have today. But he wasn't miraculously predicting it. He knew that was the agenda, and it's a simple equation, Richie. If there's an agenda to transform human society and nothing intervenes to stop it, that agenda will unfold. And that's why when you get access to the agenda, predicting the future is such a doddle, such a piece of cake and so easy. The trick is we, through knowledge of this, intervene and stop these things unfolding as they are now.
David, thanks for that. Brilliant stuff. That's it for Dot Connecting with David Icke this time. Remember, you can catch David Monday to Friday reviewing the papers with me, Richie Allen, on The Richie Allen Show. Dot Connecting with David Icke returns very soon. Bye for now.